What's up, Chuck? I know. I guess I'm a little late. It's 12:15 already. Sorry, I was looking at and going the final round through the Marcinkowitz Jazz Trombone Bootcamp scholarship applications to make the announcement today. So we're going to do that today during the live stream, as well as answer your questions, of course. So anyway, that's why I'm late, because I was looking at all the last minute entries that had come in this week, and so that's why I'm late. So thanks for understanding. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being here. And so we'll get to that later on in the show today. But we're going to start off with, obviously, questions. So please feel free to drop in your questions as we go along through our session here today. And so feel free anything you want. And talk about jazz, talk about trombones, talk about jazz trombone, or college, music school, whatever. Wherever people want to take the conversation today, I'm happy to do that, as well as releasing music, etc. Speaking of releasing music, if you didn't know, there's a new EP out last Friday. It came out, and a new video just came out literally 15 minutes ago on YouTube of one of the tunes from that new live EP, the live EP Cast of Characters Live in Denton, which was a concert that we recorded just before the lockdown last year in 2020. And that was at UNT, at the University of North Texas. And we played through some of the music from Cast of Characters, the album that had come out. It was supposed to be the kickoff to a longer tour, but the world had other plans for us all. So that doesn't really happen the way we thought it was going to, but that's all right. But anyway, there's a brand new video out today, and that's called Patience, and it features the great piano playing of Dave Meter. And Dave Meter is also a colleague at the University of North Texas, and he is a great pianist and a great educator. So he plays a nice long introduction to the tune. But anyway, that's up now on YouTube. You can check that out if you like, and we'll go from there. But yeah, we will be, of course, announcing the winner of the scholarship, Marcinkowitz Scholarship, to the Jazz Trombone Bootcamp. And I'm very excited to say that we actually are going to have one more opportunity to get a scholarship for the camp. For those that watch this and maybe thought they might want to win this time, we have one more opportunity coming up, and that'll be announced next week after Memorial Day. Sorry, Monday is Memorial Day. After that, next week, the first week of June, we will be having an exciting new announcement, new collaboration there for one more Jazz Trombone Bootcamp scholarship, which is super exciting. So that's very, very awesome, and I'm really glad to be able to do that for another person. And so we'll go ahead and open that up next week. But for now, we have one person to announce. Well, I see one of our TAs, DJ Rice, is here. And so hi, DJ. Thanks for joining. I see a lot of people. Luke is here. Andrew's here. Hi, Andrew. Dandrick. I said hi to Chuck already. But yeah, thanks for joining on Instagram. Feel free to drop in some questions down there. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, also feel free to drop in questions as we go. But since there's no questions yet, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and do the little announcement portion of today's live stream, talking about the Jazz Trombone Bootcamp live stream. This is just a good place for me to announce things since I do it every Friday. So, all right, so the winner of the first one went to Sia Charles, a great young jazz trombonist out in South Africa. What's up, Alex? And then, so she's going to be joining us. And then today, I'm excited to announce that we're going to be offering the scholarship to Kieran Bonsignore from Rutgers University. So Kieran, if you're watching, if you see this, feel free to get in touch. I'll be emailing you shortly after this to talk about the next steps here. But we're really excited to have you. And I'm really thank you for everyone who entered. And I'm sorry we didn't have more this time around. But of course, we're going to keep it going next year and try to have even more scholarships. But like I said, we're going to open it up for one more next week. And so just stay tuned for that. Otherwise, get registered if you want to come to the camp. It is filling up, and we can't have unlimited people actually in the camp. We have an auditor level where you can just kind of watch what's going on, which is totally fine if that's what you want to do. But we can have a lot of people do that. But in terms of actually being on the call, it gets too many people, and you know how it is. I'm sure you've all experienced the too many people on a Zoom call before, and it goes crazy. Kevin says, what's the camp going to be like? Will any of it be recorded? Yes, it will be recorded, but only for people that are attending the camp. So it won't be made public. It's only for people that are registering for the camp. So I posted on Instagram kind of a sample schedule for the day. So basically every day was going to include a masterclass that I'll give, kind of about probably something kind of granular. I kind of have an idea of what we're going to do, but I also try to get an idea of what's happening with the students. So next week I'll be sending out like kind of a info sheet where people can kind of say like what they're working on, what they're trying to learn, all that kind of stuff. So we can kind of cater somewhat of the sessions to what people are thinking about and working on. But we're going to talk about jazz vocabulary, talk about transcription. We're going to talk about learning tunes, all kind of those broad topics, but kind of definitely dialing down into what particularly about those topics people are trying to learn. So basically every day there'll be a warm-up session and getting different approaches to warming up from our TAs, from me, from some of the warm-up stuff I've got out there, some stuff that people are working on, some differences, about what different people do, obviously. And then we're going to have like every day we'll have a listening session during our lunch break where we'll talk about just listening together, things to listen for, things that maybe you haven't heard when you've been listening on your own. Every day not every day, but 4 of the 5 days, there's a guest artist masterclass. That's with Michael Davis. That's with Andre Hayward, Vincent Gardner, Steve Davis. Those guys are going to come on and they're going to hear some of our registrants play, and then they're going to hear us. We're going to ask them questions. They're going to play a little bit. So we get all of that from the artists. And then, like I said, I'll be leading a masterclass every day. And then so we have those kind of 4 sessions. And at the end of the day, we just kind of a Q&A just to kind of wrap up every day and kind of be like, what did he say again? And you'll also be getting kind of like a PDF packet of all the exercises that we put together and all the presentations and everything like that. So you'll walk away with not only those videos to go back to, but also a packet to kind of hang on to in terms of exercises and stuff like that. And then obviously just the relationships of everyone else that you meet at the camp. So it's going to be a lot of good times, good hangs. All right. Brian Soy, he says, congrats to Kieran. And what's up to Hu Kuride? Sorry, I wish I had a better, I could read. All right, I see some questions coming. I see people joining onto the live stream here on Instagram. So let me start with Instagram question, and I see one from Brian. All right, DJ says, what's your favorite Steve Davis record composition? Oh, I like, what's my favorite? I really like Systems Blue is a good record of Steve Davis's. Systems Blue is a good one. I go through different phases. What's my favorite Steve Davis tune? I'm not sure if I know what my favorite tune of his is. Yeah, I don't know, but I like that record. I like that record a lot. Okay, Brian had a question. Brian says, is it better for artists to put their albums on streaming platforms, more listeners, but losing money, or not using streaming, making all listeners buy the music, but losing out on listeners who stream? That question, so he's asking about streaming and if he should put his music or anyone's music on streaming. It's a question of your goals and a question of what you're trying to get out of the release. If you don't put it on Spotify, you're losing out, or just streaming in general, you're losing out on a huge percentage of the market, a huge percentage. People who want to support the artist directly are going to do that, whether or not they do the streaming or not. But even if I buy a CD, I would like to be able to go on streaming and also stream your music, right? Because then you're actually double dipping. So your biggest fans are going to buy and they're going to stream, right? So you want to get the most people in that category where they want to collect stuff of yours, recordings, and use the technology that's available, streaming, right? So I kind of advise doing both, right? So especially for artists that are in the first part of their career, you've got to go to where people are. You can't expect people to come to you, unfortunately. So you need to go to where they are, and where they are is on the streaming services. And so that means you have to go and put yourself out there on the streaming services. And so if you just decide that your music isn't going to be on there because you think you're going to make more money another way, what you're going to realize is that you just have no reach, and you're not going to be able to get it out to anybody. Is that me saying that I think that they shouldn't pay more? No, I think they should pay more. But the way that their model is, it becomes a difficult conversation. Like, I'm not trying to say Spotify's doing the right thing, but they have a certain percentage of monies that are from subscriptions and ads that go to the artists. And so they divide that up in percentages based on how many plays you get. And then it comes out to be crap for most of the independent artists, and the label artists that have negotiated a different deal get a better deal, So the number one thing I can tell you that to do as a young artist, or not even a young artist, but like if you're not a famous artist, is that you have to build up your fan base. Because if you have a fan base, you can basically do whatever you want. If you have 1,000 people who are going to buy a CD, a collectible item, maybe it's an LP, maybe it's a t-shirt, you can make stuff and know that you're going to sell it and actually make a return on your investment and be able to start to build. But when you're still in the building phase and you don't have any audience, it's impossible for you to really get anywhere, because you're just spinning your wheels. You're spending money, and then you're taking away the chance for people to connect with you. So that's the goal of streaming. It's like not just to like make a few cents, it's to build your audience. At least that's how I think about it. And that's why we push for playlisting. That's why we push for collaborations. There's a lot of things like that. So I know it's kind of a deeper topic and kind of a deeper topic other than like just trombone or whatever, but that's what I think, and that's what we do. That's what the label, the label, we push everything onto streaming unless an artist is really, at this point, I don't even think I would take an artist that wanted to not be on streaming. In the past, we have done some, but at this point, I don't think I would take someone that said, I'm not going to do streaming, because that's like a huge portion of discovery and a huge portion of being able to make any money off the record, even if it's not as much as we want, But you have to be creative. There's other ways to monetize your music that's not through streaming. There's licensing with using your music for film, video, podcasts, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, lots of ways to monetize your music. You just have to be creative. I'm working on a book, right? And so I've been working a lot on this book and talking about, ways to monetize your music and ways to be creative in the development of your brand around your music. And that, I think it's just as important to do that. So thanks for joining. I see a bunch of new people here on Instagram. What's up, Abel? What's up, the Bass Bones Cycle, Dominguez, Sam? Thanks for joining. Did you play Maria most recently from West Side Story? I do have some videos of Maria from West Side Story. I put it on 2 albums of mine. One is a video project that came out called Here and Now Live in New York City, and that is on YouTube also. But we played Maria from West Side Story there, and also on No Arrival, which is a record out on Positone Records. We played it there too. It's one of my favorite tunes from that show, and really just in general. So, what's up, Kegati? Thanks. I'm glad you liked it, man. Brian asks, how accurate have you found Ireal Pro to be when it comes to providing changes? Thoughts on Ireal Pro in general? It's a great tool. It's really annoying sounding a lot, Ireal Pro. If I had another option, I would get rid of it in a heartbeat. But, especially during this last year, we needed the ability to have some play-alongs. I don't know. You have to check every lead sheet, I think. Every lead sheet that I look at, whether it's from somebody I trust, whether it's from Ireal Pro, whether it's from the Real Book, I put it through the paces and say, what do I think the changes are? What recordings did I listen to? Because it's always from a version, And then in my mind, I always try to actually simplify chords down and chord sequences down. So it might say one thing, but actually I'm like, well, those are tritone substitutes, or those are some other substitute changes that don't have to be there, and so I try to zoom out and look at the big picture view and try to take that big picture view of things. And so that's something that I do that I think is important. So I couldn't give you a percentage accuracy, but I would never trust any lead sheet. I would always go to the recording and always go to multiple recordings and always find out all the different places where there are different changes, because then you can identify, okay, in bar 7, I need to listen because I don't know whether this pianist and bass player are going to play this or they're going to play that, So, but regardless, the big picture of like the tonal landing centers are 90% going to be correct anyway. It's always the details. And of course, the devil is in the details, right? That's what sets a great musician apart, is their attention to detail a lot of time, and making sure that they're actually dealing with those details. And that's how you get your own playing better, is by diving into the details and then zooming out, so that those details get better and better and better over time. And then they take care of themselves after a while, right? At least in my experience, they do. All right. People feel free to drop in any other questions that they have. I'm trying to think. We got the early bird pricing for the boot camp is going to end on Monday. So if you do want to join us next, it's on June 14th through 18th. It's going to be 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern each day. And if you do want to join us, the price is going to go up on June 1st. So do try to grab that this weekend. How many standards do you reckon you know by the heart off the top of your head? I don't know, 100, 200, something? Abel, got all 4 of my wisdom teeth. Let me see, hang on. All 4 of my wisdom teeth removed a few days ago. How long should I go without playing trombone? That's a question for your doctor, not for me. I think if you're not in pain, it's okay. From what I've heard, when people got their wisdom teeth out, it took them a week or so before they could really get back on the horn. But I think it has more to do with your pain level than it has to do with anything else. I don't necessarily, I don't know for sure, but I don't think playing the trombone is going to really hurt your wisdom teeth. But it might, screw up your stitches or something if you do it too soon. So trust your doctor. DJ says 2 weeks, but it took him a month. That's a long time. But it probably just hurts, I would imagine. But trust your dentist, not your doctor, your dentist, about how long you should go. They're going to tell you a couple of weeks, I'm sure, because they don't want you to screw up the... you don't want to get, what do they call it? Dry sockets. You don't want that to happen. Don't want that to happen to you. That is 100% for sure. Interesting. Oh, hello, Jack. Jack's here. Sorry, interesting. Sometimes it seems like Facebook is just not agreeing with me very well these days. Okay, but here's a good question from Jack. Jack is also part of our Jazz Trombone Bootcamp TA camp. Who's your Mount Rushmore of jazz? The 4 absolute most important names. You can defend your 4 picks, but you're not allowed to list any other names. See, he's qualifying this question because I always skate around his questions and answers. Okay, Mount Rushmore of jazz, absolute most important names. You can defend, but not allowed to list any other names. Now I'm just stalling. Okay, Mount Rushmore of jazz, most important jazz musicians. I'm going to say, I won't list any other names, but again, this is for me, I'll say, for me. I think you got to say, I think you can't get away from Louis Armstrong, because without Louis Armstrong, there's a lot of things that wouldn't have happened. Duke Ellington, there's a lot of reasons there, but I'll say Duke Ellington, 100%. And then we'll keep moving forward to, this is hard. It's hard to pick only 4. That's okay, but I'm going to do this. I think you got to say, I'm actually going to say Monk, and then I'll say Coltrane. And obviously this leaves out a bunch of people, but I think that the people that I picked influenced so many other people that you could kind of draw the connections from there. So what did I say? I said Louis Armstrong, I said Duke Ellington, I said Monk, and then I said Coltrane, John Coltrane. So there you go. 4 names. Jack. All right, Brian, do you think there are original rhythms for each standard? If someone called a tune, are people usually on the same page when it comes to the rhythm of the melody? I don't know that they are on the same page all the time. I think that goes to knowing the lyrics, if there's lyrics. I'll say that if it's a jazz tune, like Confirmation, there's a generally accepted like rhythmic thing happening, or generally accepted rhythm of the melody. But I would say with like a standard, you have to know the lyrics and how the lyrics get phrased. That's what defines the melody to me. You can do a lot, but you wouldn't breathe in the middle of a word, or you wouldn't like awkwardly say one word really fast and then stretch out the forever, right? So you gotta just like have some awareness. I don't know all the lyrics to all standards that I know, but I do know when I learned the melodies, I did try to learn them from a source that had words as well as non-words so that I could know how it was phrased, you know? What's up? What's up, Alton? My favorite version of Stardust. What is my favorite version of Stardust? I think it's Nat King Cole with the orchestra. I think. It's killing. Yeah, now I'm thinking about it more. Yes, Nat King Cole. What? Left hand pain. Oh, you're talking about trombone left hand pain? You got to excuse me. You got to find a way to hold your trombone, or it's not hurting you. What that tells me is you're probably squeezing too hard. The question was about left hand pain. I think it happens a lot to people that play a trigger horn, and sometimes people use it like a brace. Steve Turre always used to talk about making a gripper for his horn, which would be like more contoured to your hand. But so check it out. This is something I had to think about. Is like when you hold the trombone, that's over there. But when you hold the trombone, if you hold your hand like this way, if your elbow is out, like you're putting a lot of pressure here on your wrist. And so like some people use like a paddle to put on the backside of their wrist, and then some people use like a strap. Robin Eubanks has a strap. Other bass trombonists have a strap. But if you shift your arm from diagonal to upright. So this is Steve had me do this too. Was like, think about it like the more you get your elbow kind of underneath, it's not 100% underneath because that's a little unnatural really, but like if it's straight, then all of a sudden all the weight from your horn is transferred down into your arm and not into your left hand, and you don't have to squeeze, you know. But a lot of the pain I find comes from people with trigger horns or bass trombone players, either from the extra weight or just the weird way that they have their arm kind of contorted to hold it. So I try to get your arm to support the weight of the horn and try to relax your fingers. Yeah, Taylor is asking about Miles on my Mount Rushmore. And yeah, I mean, I was thinking about Miles. I was also thinking about Art Blakey. Now I broke the rules. Okay. DJ asked, if you had to release an album of all classical trombone solo rep, what pieces would you pick? What's up, Chris Glassman? Classical rep that I would pick. I would not pick the Tomasi. I don't like that one. I've always liked Andante and Allegro. I know it's kind of like played out. I like the Grandal concerto. I mean, the David is classic. I don't know if I would record that one. The Hindemith has kind of grown on me. I always like the Schulich. Probably some like weird. There's this piece called, what's it called? Red Balloons by Jim Pugh and Dave Taylor. It's like some weird stuff. And there's some like Michael Davis like stuff that's like goes with like a tape, like a play along, I guess, but it's like a piece, a classical piece, something like that. Those are some things. I don't know. I'm not going to make a classical record though. I'd probably do a quartet too. I'd rather do that. Like the Slide Monsters thing is super cool. I do love a good trombone ensemble. I am a trombone nerd at heart, after all. Right? Yeah. There's great harmony in that solo. That's why I like it. I wrote a tune using that harmony. Okay. People asking about Coltrane, Miles. What standard do you think should be played more at jam sessions? That's a good question. I don't know. This is an interesting concept because it's always different depending on where you go. Like certain tunes, different areas, different people play different tunes. Like in some places, like, but then it also shifts like over time. Like there was a bunch of tunes that I always thought were like Eastman tunes, but then now people don't play them so much anymore. And then there was like a bunch of tunes people played in Tallahassee, like anyone that spent a good amount of time in New Orleans, they call tunes like Ellis Marcellus tunes, like Swinging at the Haven, or that's the Ellis one that I think people call. There's others too, but that comes to mind. Magnolia Triangle is like this New Orleans tune also that people play, but like I never heard that called in New York. Or at Eastman or Juilliard. So I think it depends. But then like you go to Boston and everybody is playing like more Wayne tunes, right? So I don't know. So to answer your question, it depends on where you are. I mean, see more Cedar Walton tunes. That would be cool to hear at jam sessions. There's my answer. But in New York, people play Cedar Walton tunes. So I don't know. But when you get outside of New York, people don't know sometimes like the hard bop stuff, the Beyond Song for My Father, Horace Silver tunes. There's a lot of great Horace Silver tunes that are Cooking at the Continental. That's a good one. Break City. It's another one. I mean, Quicksilver. There's a lot of great Horace Silver tunes out there that people don't play. I don't know. And now I'm just listing songs, so that's kind of irrelevant. Have I tried Alexander Technique? No, I haven't, to be honest. I always thought about it, but I never did do it. I do try to stay relaxed when I play, though. I find that to be essential. All right, sorry, I'm going back to Jack. Sorry, I skipped over your question. Jack asks, what players can you identify from a single note, and is the quality of being that identifiable / having that unique of a sound important one to me? I'll say that it was not always the case that I could do this. And I think you have to get to a certain level of familiarity with an artist. At this point, I would say there's a lot of people that I could identify with one note. Well, one note is maybe even harder than, because that note could be long or short. But people that have super identifiable sounds to me, I mean, there's a lot of people I probably could identify. But, I think Train, Miles, well, also with Miles, it really depends on what era you're talking about. But Train for sure. I mean, for me, I can recognize J.J. Curtis slide pretty easily. Carl Fontana has a very recognizable sound. Or it could be an imitator, at this point. There's a lot of those imitators. But piano is hard to tell from the sound, but you can tell from the vocabulary. A drummer, you can kind of tell by the ride cymbal pattern and the how they space the beat. At least that's how I hear it, because I don't hear the touch the same way as a drummer does. But I've always put that in a high regard, that I want people to be able to know who it is, or I also want to be able to know who it is, and that I could play in such a way that it would be able to be translated for those that were paying attention. I wouldn't expect anyone that's not like a jazz head, for lack of a better word, somebody that's really into it, to be able to identify players. But as a player, you should be able to identify your heroes, But it took me a while. I guessed wrong. Coltrane a bunch of times. Brecker, you can kind of tell, but there's so many Brecker clones too that, I mean, it's the same as to me, it was like learning how to identify harmony. the extensions of a dominant chord is a similar way to how I learned how to identify people's sounds. But I don't think you can do it without experience. You listen to a lot of Coltrane, you can always recognize it. You listen to a lot of Bird, you always know when it's a Bird and when it's not. Especially after you've studied it. I think Joshua Redman has an identifiable sound. Pretty identifiable. There's so many Mark Turner clones that's hard now. Same with Seamus. There's a lot of people that kind of sound like that. Guitar is hard for me to identify. Anyway, sorry, now I'm just going on a tangent here. How do you come up with titles for composition and albums? That is a complicated scenario. I used to be even worse with titles. I don't have a system. I always recommend to my students, though, when I always recommend that they go write the titles down as they occur to them and have like a document, but I usually go with like the vibe of the piece and the emotional content of the piece and like what should it be called, kind of based around that rather than a clever title, because punny titles they're funny and clever, but at a certain point they become pretty nerdy and not very relatable to an audience. What's up, Lawson? Alton asked if I ever upgraded my interface. Yeah, I have two. I have a setup at school and I have a setup at home. And so at home I have this Zoom L8 that has it has 8 inputs. Obviously, that's why it's called 8. But then I just have a Focusrite, the little red 2-channel one at school. For now, I think I might swap that and put the 8-track at school and then take the red one, the Focusrite 2i2 out of there. But I feel like, there's so much stuff that's like pretty okay that it doesn't matter that much unless you want to spend a lot of money to make it sound really, really good. So I've kind of given up on like doing a bunch of research about it. I was going to get like a Universal Audio stuff, but it was just so much more expensive and like I'm, as a producer for records, I'm pretty experienced at like listening to stuff and hearing what I want to change, but the actual like technical details of like the frequency and what to do to the frequency to get the result is not always my strength. So I can like articulate it to an engineer, but I need somebody to help. So for me, I'm always going to have that kind of collaborative thing. I think, maybe it's something I'll probably learn over time, but I've just been focused on other things. So let's see. Taylor, when you were at Eastman, what do you remember working on the most in the practice room? How did you balance your routine between standards and technique? It was 80% trombone stuff, especially then. You got to have, for trombone at least, you have to have a level of mastery of the instrument to be able to express your ideas. And so to me, that means playing classical repertoire, having a good sound, playing in tune, playing in time, having good articulation. All of that stuff comes before you even play jazz, and I think it's true of many instruments. Everybody has their own experience, but you can't. On trombone, you can't. If you don't have good technique, you can't play a JJ solo. You can't play a Curtis solo. If you don't have good technique, you don't have good articulation, you don't have a good sound. You just can't do it. So to me, that's what 80% of practicing trombone, jazz, to me, is practicing trombone. The other 20% is learning tunes, learning vocabulary, learning music. And then there's a whole other side that's like, playing the piano, understanding harmony, learning harmony, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say that most of it is not spent learning standards, maybe to my detriment. But I also think it depends on your instrument. Like as a guitarist or as a pianist or as a bass player, for sure, you have to know lots of tunes. So that's something that maybe is more in the forefront of your mind. Not that trombonists shouldn't know tunes, but just in terms of the gigs that you're going to play, you're going to have a lot more reading gigs as a trombone player than trio standards gigs, unless you set it up. It's just the reality of the marketplace. Let's see. Okay, so there's a question here from Dominguez. Angel Dominguez, sorry. Does equipment really matter? Horn, mouthpiece, like the most comfortable horn and mouthpiece versus making the best out of good equipment, decent equipment. Yeah, man, I'm pretty much of the opinion that the equipment is just one part of it. It's not really that important. I mean, it's like when you get into the nuances of like executing a certain thing or executing in a certain way, a certain thing, or like having a certain sound for a certain situation, then equipment becomes a more important part of the conversation, perhaps. But in general, I would just say 80% is not about the horn. So if somebody's trying to say you're going to sound better if you switch horns, that might be true, and it also might not be true. It just depends where you're at in your process and where you're at, like what sound concept wise. But I'll tell you this: when I was finishing my undergrad, I decided I wanted to get a new horn as a graduation present to myself, and I asked everybody in my life that was like, "Oh, what do you want for graduation?" Or they wanted to get, instead of giving me money, I wanted them to help me make a purchase of a new instrument, and everybody was on board because, they wanted it to go towards something like that. And so when I went to get the instrument, I focused on ease of playing. And when I did that, I thought that it was supposed to be easy to play everything or anything. And so I made my decisions kind of based around that idea and that restraint and that concept. And it became the most frustrating thing about the instrument, is that it did exactly what I wanted really well and couldn't do anything else. So for me, that was extremely frustrating, and why I ended up making a change to a horn that some people might say is not as good, quote unquote, by some standard. But for me, it allows me to do more things well than what I was playing before. And so for me, it's the sound, and I need to have that ability to get a sound and go for the sound and not worry so much about making it easy, because you can make it easy by being a better player, So that's how I think about the equipment question, is that an equipment change is a last ditch effort. I literally played that instrument for 4 or 5 years and kept thinking, it's me. It's got to be me. It's got to be me. I'm doing something wrong. I'm doing something wrong. And once I literally tried to get better at every single thing, then I went to the equipment side to try to change something. So it doesn't mean that's the right way to do it, but that's how I did it. And I just think it's important to go for the sound and go for the result that you want. If you want to have a bigger sound, you probably got to play a bigger horn. By bigger, I mean more diffuse. You can get a big sound on a small horn, but if you're a person that's like, oh well, I only want to play in the upper register, so I'm going to get a small horn, and then you neglect the low. It's like things compound. So I think you should be able to do everything, because you never know what a gig situation is going to call for. You don't want to be like, well, I can't do that. I don't ever want to have to tell somebody that. So anyway, that's a long digression about equipment. Excuse me. Ryan, excuse me. Just drink some coffee. Ryan asks, do you have any advice for musicians starting to get into jazz? Yes, listen to a lot of jazz. Listen to a lot of jazz. Make sure you're listening to the type of music that you're trying to learn. Sometimes people say they want to learn jazz, but then they listen to stuff that's not jazz, and that's not helpful. So you want to listen to this type of stuff that you're trying to learn, that you're trying to play, the people that you want to play with. Try to figure out what the end goal is there and just dive right in and learn solos, learn repertoire, learn style through recordings. Don't worry about buying any books. Just go to the recordings, listen, transcribe, learn from the recordings. That's the best thing I can tell you. And start improvising. And just getting over that fear of improvising, getting a love for the music, a sense of the beat, a sense of the flow. That's the most important thing, is getting jazz inside of your brain. Just like if you're going to speak a foreign language, you have to listen to that language and how it's spoken to be able to speak it well, or else, you know what it sounds like when someone speaks to you in a broken version of your language. So that's what it sounds like to a jazz musician when you just like sort of know a little bit of vocabulary and you kind of play it awkwardly in a tune. Like it sounds like someone speaking a broken language to you. So that's my advice. Listen so much, all the time. Taylor, do you listen to any music podcasts or any outside of music? Yeah, I've been listening to audiobooks recently, but I do listen to podcasts. I always liked that Reply All podcast, but that had a unfortunate turn at the end there. And I liked that podcast, but that's done for now. But I listened to Tim Ferriss's podcast. I listened to, excuse me, I've gone down little rabbit holes with different podcasts. Some of the, like when Serial came out, I listened to that back a couple years ago. But yeah, I switched to audiobooks because I was realizing that like sometimes podcasts are not as, sometimes they're just conversations and they're just not as in-depth maybe or thoughtful. Some are very thoughtful, but sometimes it's just, random stuff. And I was like, I need to be more efficient about what I'm putting into my brain, not just like volume, being a little more thoughtful about what goes into my brain, I guess. But yeah, so I do listen to podcasts. I've listened to, Invisibilia. There was 99. There's a whole bunch of them that I've kind of gone in and out of. 99% Invisible. Is that what it's called? And I kind of nerdy. I kind of get into the crypto stuff for a while. I was listening to this one called Modern Finance, by Kevin Rose. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, okay, wonderful. So just to recap, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to drop them in. But the big announcement for today is our scholarship winner for the Marcinkiewicz Jazz Trombone Bootcamp Scholarship. And the first winner was Sia Charles from Cape Town, South Africa. And we're going to have also Kieran Bonsignore. He had a very, very thoughtful application and video that he submitted. And he's from Rutgers University in New Jersey. And so we're going to welcome them to the camp, the Jazz Trombone Boot Camp. That's June 14 through 18. So they're just a little over 2 weeks to get registered for that if you want to join us. So please do that. nickfinzer.store. You'll see the link at the top of the page. And like I said, we're going to have a really another opportunity, another collaboration with a company to offer another scholarship, I think, next week. So stay tuned for that. And I'll, of course, announce it in all of the places. Let's see. I saw some questions drop in as I was talking. Thoughts on Rich DeRosa and his arranging style? I have no thoughts to offer at this present moment about Rich. He's a great arranger. He's very, very experienced. Okay. John asks, you recently released recording A Sorcerer. Reminds me a little bit of Radiohead's Pyramid Song. Are they an influence to your music? I was never a huge Radiohead fan, but I have obviously listened to Radiohead. And when Of Rainbows came out, there was a lot of stuff that came with that, which meant that like I was definitely paying attention. And then interestingly, and related to that, is with my nonprofit, the Institute for Creative Music, something that we've done for a long time since we started in 2011 is use popular tunes as a gateway into improvisation. And so we use Radiohead tunes. Unfortunately, like the kids don't know them anymore, so they're not that popular. So we got to find some new material. But yeah, I've used Radiohead as an entry point into improvisation in the past a bunch. Brian, would you ever return to the Trombone Discord server? It seems like you had a couple posts back in 2019. Yeah, I joined the Trombone Discord server. I was in Switzerland, I think, when I joined. But I didn't intentionally leave. I just forgot. And Discord's not somewhere where I live very often. Should I go back? You're welcome, Ryan. I guess I could go back there. I don't know. Is the Trombone Discord server a cool place to hang out? I have no idea. I don't know. Someone will have to fill me in because I haven't been on there in so long. I still would probably have to remember my login. I know. I guess I'm old in that way. I don't know that much about Discord other than I know what it is, but Whoops, there's a question. Let's see here. How do you go about playing in odd keys, considering most of the time we stay around the B flat, F, E flat, A flat, D flat? You play in those keys. You have to get equally familiar. I like to think about. I like to think about a tune like Cherokee, for example. This is a great reason to know all your keys. Like you got to play in B, A, and G in the key if you call that tune in B flat. So playing like a tune like that in 12 keys, you get all the easy keys, the bridge is hard. All the hard keys, the bridge is easy. So you got to just know them all equally well, because you don't want to be like, oh, I can't play in that key, I can't play in this key. But I think you hear new things in different keys because it lays different on the trombone. So how do I go about it? I play in different keys. That's how. I have a scale workout and mode workout that I do with my students that tries to get you familiar with those keys, but you got to do the work. That's all you can do to it. Wait a minute, I have a guest. Sounds like he wants to come on the show here. You want to come on the live stream, Duke? Are you coming? Yeah, he's coming. Sorry, my dog wanted to come on the live stream. He's over here, though. Okay. It is now the year 2050, and science now allows us to upload the ability to play exactly like any jazz musician into your brain. Would you, under any circumstances, take advantage of this technology? And if this is a ridiculous question. Say hi to everyone. Say hi. Okay. Hi. Okay. You need to go out. Anyway, sorry. 2050, you're asking about the ability to upload it directly into my brain to be able to play. Would I take advantage, and what player? I think it would be interesting to see what would happen if you had like Michael Brecker's brain playing a trombone. That would be super interesting, or something like that, or like Herbie. So yeah, sure, I'll take advantage of the technology. It would be Herbie Chick, Brecker, something like that. Somebody who like doesn't play trombone, and like what would happen if that vocabulary got translated onto the trombone. I think that's because that's like where I would hope someday to be able to play like, but may or may not happen. You never know. Let's see. Okay. So that's a question about key signatures. All right. I got time for just a couple more questions. I got to sign off here soon. He's talking about the Discord server. All right. Well, I'll try to get back on the Discord server. I'll try to. Do you think social media will still be helpful for promoting gigs 20 years from now? I don't think so, because it's going to be something else in 20 years, and I don't think it's that good for promoting gigs now anyway. Social media is good for developing a relationship with people, not trying to advertise to them on a platform that's not intended for advertising. If you want to advertise people to come to your gig, you should advertise. You should not commingle your advertising and your professional like portfolio, like make it about selling if it's about selling, make it about music if it's about music, like all those things should be about that one thing. But if you're just constantly on social media, like come to my gig, it's going to be difficult to keep people engaged with your stuff. That's all. Not that you can't do it, but I don't think people respond to it in that way. The better way to do it is like for people to want to come because they're interested in you anyway, and that they would know that you were doing stuff. And that goes back to the bigger question of how do you develop an audience, and how do you really engage with them on the long term, which is more important than any one gig, in my opinion. But yeah, there will be something else, a new version of social media in 20 years. So I don't know what it'll look like, but I don't know. All the same stuff is going to happen on every platform, which is people trying to share their art, people trying to get people to buy stuff, and people trying to connect and communicate, and then people trying to get people to do things, try to advertise to them. So whatever whatever form it takes is going to have different best practices. So you just got to stay on top of those things. Excuse me. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off. Congrats again to our winners of the scholarship. I'm very excited to welcome you to Jazz Trombone Boot Camp in a couple of weeks. And if anyone wants to get on board for that, it'll be happening in June 14th through June 18th, and it's going to be great. Kevin says in 20 years there will be a new way to get a lobotomy. Yeah, I'm sure. Virtual lobotomy, something like that. All right, thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you being here. We'll be back. Yeah, next Friday we'll be back, and then we'll might have to take a couple weeks break after that, but we'll be back next Friday, June 4th, with another live stream. So I hope you had a fantastic week, and I hope you have a great long weekend. If you're in the U.S., it's Memorial Day weekend, so we'll be having a nice long weekend. Anyway, I'm going to sign off and have a great